Welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa. Welcome to EWTN Live. We're bringing you guests from all over the world, and our guest has done a lot of traveling around this world. He was enthroned almost 5 months ago as the head of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church in the United States, after he helped to lead the church's resurgence in the Ukraine. That included the revival of the Lviv Theological Academy in Lviv, a city in Ukraine. And that then evolved into what is now the Ukrainian Catholic University. The Ukrainian Catholic Church is the largest of the 23 Eastern Rite churches that are part of the Catholic Church. Here in the United States, like many other different churches, it faces a lot of challenges. Aging parishioners, declining numbers at Mass, young people less connected to the religious practices of their parents. So, here to tell us more about the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church in the United States and the spiritual revival he hopes to see in it, please welcome the Metropolitan Archbishop of the Ukrainian Catholic Archieparchy of Philadelphia, Most Rev. Borys Gudziak.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, Excellency.
Thank you.
It is so nice to have you.
Yeah, it's been a few years, but it's good to be back.
When was it that you were last?
I think it was before I was a bishop, so it must have been 2010 or so.
Yeah, so
2011.
It's been a good number of years.
Yes.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And since then, you've lived in Ukraine?
I was in France, actually.
In France.
I was in Ukraine from 92 to 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Holy Father, on the recommendation of our synod, appointed me bishop in Paris for Ukrainian Catholics in France, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
So from 2012 to this year, I circulated in those countries. There's 3 million new immigrants from Ukraine in the European Union. Mm-hmm. And there was a great need for establishing new parishes throughout these 5 countries.
Sure. Well, it's Ukraine has gone through a lot of horrible difficulties, including the invasion by Russia, taking a section of the country of Ukraine, and still fighting that goes on.
It's every day. Somebody's killed every day.
Yeah.
There's, in the 5.5 years of war, over 30,000 people have been killed. That's the official statistics. I think it could be actually twice as much because the casualties on the Russian-occupied side are not fully reported.
Yeah, the underreporting how many folks die there is not.
There's 2.5 million people that had to leave their homes. 5 million people are affected. And the economic war, because it's a hybrid war, it's an information war, it's a cyber war. For example, Ukrainian electronics, electricity can be attacked through the computers, the banking system, through all kinds of sanctions, the closing of the Russian market for Ukrainian goods. All of this has rendered Ukraine the poorest country in Europe over the last 5 years. And a lot of people basically can't make ends meet, so they're leaving. They're leaving out of fear for the war.
Right.
There's a lot of trauma. There's 300,000 decommissioned soldiers that have been through the war already.
And we're certainly, as Americans, well aware of the kind of trauma that soldiers experience from battle. It's painful.
More soldiers, U.S. soldiers, died from suicide after Vietnam than died in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. And that pattern is showing up.
That's right. The problem is exacerbated by the history. In the 20th century, between 12 and 15 million people were killed in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. There was World War I and World War II. There was the genocide famine called the Holodomor in 32-33, the most fertile land in the world, with a good harvest. Stalin wanted to break the back of the peasantry who was resisting his rule. They didn't want to give their land to the socialist system, communist system. And so he requisitioned every last potato, every last handful of wheat in the fall of 32. And over that fall, winter, and spring of 33, at least 4 million people died. It was terrible. There were all kinds of purges of first of all, the church. The Orthodox Church in the Soviet Union, at the time when the Russian Empire became the Soviet Union, it had 100 dioceses with about 100 bishops. This is 1917. By 1939, only 4 active bishops were left. And hundreds of thousands of Orthodox were imprisoned and sent to Siberia. That's what happened to
and usually worked to death.
They were in death camps.
With very few calories per day, piece of bread, a thin soup, and not much more, and they just worked them to death. In regions
where it might be, 40, 50 degrees below zero in the winter. When Stalin paired up with Hitler, and that allowed Hitler to begin World War II, Poland was partitioned.
And so folks understand there was a treaty between Stalin and Hitler.
Called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact.
Right. Ribbentrop from the German side and Molotov of the cocktail fame on the Russian side. Right. They made agreement not to attack each other, but to attack Poland together.
That's right. And the Ukrainian ethnographic territory, which was in Poland, where the Ukrainian Eastern Catholics or Greek Catholics lived, suddenly came under the Soviets.
Right.
And the parishes weren't closed, but all other institutions were closed. Many priests were arrested, some were executed, and the deportations to Siberia began. I have an aunt who's 90 years old who witnessed as the prisons were emptied of the corpses as the Soviets were pushed back by the Nazis in 41. And to this very day, this is a trauma for her because she was carrying water for the families who were trying to wash the bodies to see if they could identify them because they'd been in the prisons for 2 or 3 days. It was a time in late June, early July when the weather was 90 degrees and the bodies were decomposing. The trauma that from generation to generation people endured under communist systems, and there's 2 billion people between Estonia and Albania and China and Vietnam that lived or continue to live under communism, is really, that trauma is something we cannot imagine.
Yeah. I've oftentimes told, I repeatedly tell folks who are part of our EWTN family that of the 75 million martyrs in the history of the whole church, 40 million died in the 20th century. And the bulk of those were Eastern Catholics and Orthodox. That the Russian Orthodox, Ukrainian Orthodox, Catholics, the different communities, Greek Catholics, Ruthenians, and so on, they hit the brunt of this onslaught of tens of millions of people being martyred.
When Stalin pushed back, because he was surprised by Hitler, his partner, who declared war against him, he lost much territory to begin with in 41, 42, but in 43 he started pushing back. And when he conquered Western Ukraine in 44, and began consolidating his hold, even before the war ended, he arrested all of the Ukrainian Catholic bishops. Because he knew the church was so interwoven with all aspects of Ukrainian society, and the church, with its moral code, with its transcendent, let's say, quality, its Catholic global communion, could not be controlled. And if it couldn't be controlled, the people couldn't be controlled. So he decided to liquidate it. All the bishops were arrested, and priests were forced to sign a paper that they're joining the Russian Orthodox Church. Now,
Right.
Ukrainian Catholics have a right that is almost identical to what the Russian Orthodox practice.
Right.
We're Byzantine Christians who are in communion with Rome. We're in
You celebrate the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom,
Chrysostom.
and so do the Orthodox.
Orthodox,
Yeah,
right.
it's a beautiful liturgy, and sometimes there are slight variations in chanting, but it's still this absolutely stunningly beautiful music that lifts the soul.
And so what happened is priests had a choice. Either renounce their Catholic communion or go to Siberia. And we don't know exactly, but over 800 priests were deported, often with their families because many were married. And the life of the church came to a halt. Many priests were exiled, or some fled to the west. I think over 500 made their way westwards, following a whole wave of immigrants, refugees, including my parents. Actually, the life of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church came to a visible halt. It was stripped of every thread of its garments. No institutions, no resources, the clergy imprisoned, the hierarchy martyred, and hundreds of thousands of faithful were deported to Siberia. About 400,000 Western Ukrainians were deported to Siberia, so about 10% of the population.
In fact, some of the issue behind the present war is that they deported Ukrainians and then brought Russians in to settle.
Right. There was a desire to mix the population,
Right.
to keep communities from having good social cohesion. And this is an incredible story, and I want to share this with our viewers and with all faithful in the U.S. and with priests and bishops, because a lot of people are either angry or depressed or both, worried, fearful. We've got scandals. We've got financial problems.
We've got politicians threatening to harm us financially if we don't go along with their agenda.
There's a lot that's coming unglued in the church and society. And Jesus tells us one basic thing, especially after the resurrection. One thing he repeats over and over: peace be with you, and don't fear.
Yeah.
Now, I want to say peace be with us all, and we should not fear. And I say seriously, maybe with a bit of a smile, you know what? It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
We just need to be ready for it. But I hope it's not going to be what our church suffered, being totally closed down. Our church had 3,000 priests before World War II in 1939. By 1989, 50 years of war and persecution, only 300 aged priests were left, about 70 years old, in a country where the life expectancy of males is 63. And the Soviets basically thought they had finished the job.
Right.
These 300 priests were so controlled, so monitored, that they could hardly move at night. They would try to celebrate a liturgy, baptize somebody, maybe marry a couple, celebrate matrimony. Maybe each of these priests could serve 100 people. If you do the math, that's about 30,000 people that had some limited contact with the church with some regularity. That's out of 4 million. In other words, the church had lost the active participation of at least 99% of its faithful.
Right.
And we're talking 32, 33 years ago, when I was young. Many discounted any possible future. It was a sad story, but we need to move on, even in the Catholic Church. Today, this church has 3,000 priests again, from 300 to 3,000 in 30 years. The average age is 40. And for 5 million faithful globally, it has 800 seminarians. This was not a strategy. It was not tactics. It was not good management.
Yeah.
It was martyrdom, witness, and above all, God's grace. It's a miracle, as is our life, as is our smile. We can die in a minute, in a year. It's all grace. And if we can live our life as a gift, we can encourage others.
Yeah. This is something important because, we live at a time of great tension in the United States and in the Western culture. The Western culture is undercutting itself in many ways, not unlike the way communism undercut the very culture and the fiber of culture in the Russian Empire and made it this chaotic, polluted mess. And we live at a time where this undercutting of the Christian origins of our culture is being done systematically, angrily. And we can say, oh, Jesus, you got to come back now because we don't know how we're going to fix it. Or we can say, Jesus, I trust in you. This is, no matter how you do it, I'm going to trust in you. This is the message that we have to, and it's no accident that message from St. Faustina happened right on the edge of Eastern Poland and Western Belarus, where the East and West meet. This is important for both sides of the church, both lungs, as Pope St. John Paul said.
The heart of our faith is the Trinity, God Himself. Mm-hmm. The Trinity is three persons. It's a mystery that we can't fathom with our mind, but I think we relate to intuitively and with our spiritual senses. God is love does not mean that God is nirvana or some positive energy. God is the relationship of three persons.
Yes.
And we are created in God's image and likeness, and as persons, we need relationship. It's like our air, it's like the water for our bodies. We need relationship. The communist system wanted to control people in a total way, right. Not like the Roman Empire, who said, to Christians, put some incense before the gods and do what you want. The communists wanted to control every single step of your life, every aspect of your thought patterns. There was a hero for all Soviet children across all 9 time zones. His name was Little Paul Morozov. What was his legend? Little Paul Morozov turned his father into the Soviet authorities. He ratted on his own father. Mm-hmm. Throughout the Soviet Union, in every major town, there was a street named after Pavlik, Little Paul Morozov. Children were taught, this is the model for you. You have to follow the example of Little Paul Morozov. If your parents say something that is contrary to Soviet ideology, contrary to the government, contrary to the policies, you should tell us. This creates incredible distrust. Yep. Because parents know that their children are taught to do so. In some cities...
And the children are taught, your parents may not be trustworthy. We're more trustworthy than they are.
That's right.
And again, pay attention to the news about what is sometimes said in schools to children about their parents.
Exactly.
It is the same as in Soviet Union.
It's the breaking up of relationships, of the most fundamental relationships. In our Western society, we've got this extreme individualism, which is relational, but it's also on the level of our epistemology, the way we think we know things. Mm-hmm. We've become extremely subjective. Mm-hmm. I think this, you think that. What you think is your thinking.
Yeah, the radical relativism of the day that's taught there until there's a disagreement, then folks will try to shove themselves down your throat.
We lose common denominators. We lose the fabric of our relationships in families, in communities, in countries. And it might get to the point where we become very small, that last remainder, like it was with our church just a few years ago, like it was actually with Christ himself. There were very few that remained to the bitter end.
And very few. I mean, it was St. John, Our Lady, Mary Magdalene,
That's right.
and a couple other women.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, for me, Paul is becoming ever more a source of inspiration. How he tirelessly, positively, joyfully, enthusiastically proclaimed the gospel, even though he was speaking to small communities. We think, you know, the letter to the Corinthians was written to
A mega church.
It was a small community.
Right.
The Philippians, he's writing to them from the prison in Rome. Read the letter of Philippians. I encourage all our it's only 4 chapters. What freedom Paul has in saying, you know, well, I could live. And the positive side of that is I can serve all of you more. But if I die, if I'm killed here in prison, I will go to the Lord. He's absolutely free because of this incredible love for Christ. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to take these examples of the martyrs. You know, often martyrdom has been treated as something far and distant, but you said the 20th century is the quintessential century of martyrdom.
There are more martyrs between 1914 and the year 2000 than in the previous 1900 years.
Exactly.
There were 35 million martyrs up until 1900, 40 more million after 1900. We cannot neglect that. And that's just a part of the 305 million people killed mostly by communists.
That's right. Today, you know, our brothers and sisters in the faith are being killed in Syria, in Iraq, in Northern Africa, in the Far East. Mm-hmm. We know the generally what is happening in Africa or in China, where there are now, they say, maybe 10 million Catholics in the population of Christians has been growing. There has never been as many Christians in the world as we have today. Never as many Catholics.
Right.
This idea of decline and demise and we just, you know, need to give up is really, it's not statistically supported, no. But statistics aren't the most important thing. It's not the modality, the nature of our faith. And that's why I want to bring the story of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church to an American audience. And I want to encourage people to read and to visit. Because for me, this was an inspiration. I didn't suffer. I lived a comfortable middle-class childhood in Syracuse, New York. I wanted to play in the NBA. That was really a fantasy. I was never that good. But
I was so bad I didn't even have that fantasy.
Yeah. But it was a great grace to be called to the priesthood and to serve in Ukraine for 20 years. I went to France kicking and screaming. I didn't really want to be a bishop in Paris, but the church asked, and I kind of went, and it became an incredible experience. Mm-hmm. We almost tripled the number of missions, and the number of priests doubled, and the budget of my diocese for 5 countries, for the bishop, the staff, and all activity on the diocesan level, not parish level, was $40,000 per year. We lived very, very modestly. The priests lived with me, whether they were celibate or married, and we would get in a van and go on a mission. We'd sing matins and vespers in the van, coming and going, and there was great love. And I'm glad to be in the U.S. The challenges here are the same for Ukrainian Catholics as they are for all Catholics. We have a wave of
and in general,
immigrants.
all Christians.
All Christians.
The Protestant churches, including the evangelicals, are also experiencing this loss of many of their young. The atheists don't have children. They're physically they're like geldings, so they just don't have the kids. But they're more like parasites, and they take the children of believers and try to turn them into atheists. And they use all sorts of propaganda to do this, but this is a problem. And all the churches are experiencing this.
It's a big challenge because there are cultural currents, this individualism or our consumerism. We're kind of bloated. We're the most comfortable cohort of human beings on the history of this globe.
Yeah.
You know, we don't tolerate a little heat. There's already air, and we put it at 66 degrees or something. If it's cold, we've got all the heating. We've got 35 brands of deodorant, men's deodorant, in the pharmacies. We've got every possible food.
And we have so much food. I went to a soap store once, and it was all avocado soap, strawberry soap, apple, peaches. We smear food on us with the soap.
That's all, you know, neutral if it doesn't control us, and if it doesn't fill the places that should be filled by spiritual food, by our relationship with God, by our relationship with our children, with our parents, with our siblings. Instead, we're hooked to these screens, and that quality that God conveys to us, the relationship of persons, is something we become more and more incompetent in. And we suffer. We suffer loneliness. We suffer alienation. We get afraid. We get anxious. And this is the beauty of our faith. When we come around the Word, when we come around the cup and the bread, and just share the victory of Christ over our death, the victory of Christ over our fear. And that's what happened in the catacombs. It's amazing. I had the privilege in the late 80s to participate in a few catacomb services. Once I went to see a priest. He was actually a bishop, but he didn't tell me he's a bishop because he was a secret bishop. He was kind of a bishop in reserve. He was the auxiliary. If the ordinary bishop was arrested, he would step in. And I went to confession, and we celebrated the liturgy, and he was actually a monk of the Studite order, and I knew his confreres in Italy and Passaic. They also had a monastery in Paraguay, and I told him about it. And with childlike joy, he was listening about these monks with whom he had a spiritual relationship. The intensity, the purity of that moment, of that quality of really holding on despite the danger, despite the threat of arrest, deportation, maybe death. It made that the life in the underground unique. And it was that seed of the kingdom, that little mustard seed, that 0.5% that remained, that has now flourished. The Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church is, because it didn't collaborate with the regime, it has great moral authority in society. Even though it's only 8% of Ukraine, Ukraine has between 40 and 45 million people. Nobody knows exactly because the census was more than 15 years ago. But Cardinal Huzar, of blessed memory, who died 2 years ago, was really the #1 moral authority in the country. And his successor, his Beatitude Sviatoslav Shevchuk, who is relatively young, he's 48 years old, speaks many languages, very bright, smiling.
I interviewed him just about 1.25 years ago. It was a wonderful, wonderful interview about how the church is developing in Ukraine.
So when we can remain faithful, even if it costs dearly, the Lord gives fruit. And we need to have that example before our eyes.
This is something that we very much need to remember. You know, it's become a pattern in the United States to attack and try to remove images of our national heroes, the great founders, and they were flawed people. Yeah. They weren't perfect, but they also were heroes at the same time of their imperfection. And it's important for us as Catholics to recover the heroes of our faith, those who stood firm, those who shed their blood rather than cave in to the state. These are very, very important things. We want to talk more about this, but we'd like to do so with some of your questions and comments. So if you have any questions for Archbishop Borys, please call in and we'll get those in our studio audience as well. And please stay with us. Right. Well, Excellency, are you ready for some questions?
Sure.
Let's start off with John. John, where are you calling from?
Oh, Father Mitch.
Oh, this John. Well, John in Ohio. How are you?
I am very good. This is fascinating. And I wanted to ask our dear bishop friend, as a matter of fact, I think we'll say some prayers before we go to bed on this. Maybe it's a little bit of the old hair from a dog that's biting you or whatever. I wondered if there's ever any evangelistic plans or prayers or programs that could be even done on the lesser friendly side of the border, and what the bishop thinks about this.
Which side of the border?
In Russia, what kind of outreach do we have, especially with the Russian Orthodox? What church? What's the relationship that we have? And Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Ukraine.
Let me give some background. There's between 4 and 6 million Ukrainians in Russia because of all the deportations. Also, Ukrainians went to work in some of the big centers or in the mines, in the various industries. If you take the fact that about 8 or 10% of Ukrainians are Eastern Catholic, that means that there could be about 500,000 Eastern Catholics in Russia. However, these Eastern Catholics are not allowed to have registered parishes. Mm-hmm. They exist under the cover of Roman Catholic churches in some places where that can happen. Mm-hmm. But in most places, they're not allowed to exist. And for those 4 to 6 million Ukrainians, there isn't a single Ukrainian language school in the 8 time zones of the Russian Federation. So it's not easy for Ukrainian Catholics to have an identity, to have a legal existence. Basically, they don't. And to impact, let's say, the spiritual life of the Russian population. There is an outreach to other parts of Ukraine where people are unchurched. There are many people who will say, as the Belarusian president says, I am Orthodox, but I'm atheist. Orthodoxy is like a cultural label. Mm-hmm. It's something that has formed the legacy of my nation. But it is not a personal attachment to Jesus Christ. It is not living according to the gospel, according to the life of the church. It's not even practicing. In Russia, the religious practice is somewhere around 2%. Mm-hmm. Russia has the highest abortion rate in the world.
Yeah, in Moscow, like in New York and Washington, D.C., 60% of all children conceived get aborted.
These are very painful statistics. So when Putin, says that I am the protector of traditional values, and unfortunately, some Catholics believe him, this is really just a myth. It's a fake. Yeah. The message today, whether it's across the Russian border or whether it's in Ukrainian families, needs to be from heart to heart. It needs to be from person to person. In the underground, when the church was persecuted and when the faith was publicly prohibited, the greatest carriers were often grandmothers, parents, who taught their children to pray.
I came across that with a man from the Ukrainian Catholic Church, Joseph Terelya. His grandmother was the one who passed on the faith because his parents could not.
And fortunately, Western Ukraine was under the Soviets only for 2 generations, which meant there were still grandparents that lived to see freedom. Mm-hmm. Actually, yesterday was the 30th anniversary of the liberation of probably the biggest Ukrainian Catholic church in Lviv. It became Ukrainian Catholic again. December 1st, just a few weeks from now, will be the 30th anniversary of Gorbachev's meeting with Saint Pope John Paul II. And on that occasion, a few hours before the meeting, Soviet authorities announced that after 43 years of illegal existence, the Eastern Catholics in Ukraine can be free again. But in that time, it had to be person to person. And I think we need to return to that. We need for each Catholic, each Christian to be a missionary disciple, somebody that carries the faith with the word, but more so with our life, with the way we look at people, with the way we smile, with the choices we make. People should be, in some ways, attracted to the life of Christians, as it was in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was brutal, with the crucifixions, with the slavery, with the minimal rights of women. Christians converted the empire by the love. They were different. Mm-hmm. And that we need to be different. We need to have our whole life guided by the example of our Lord. It's not easy. We're all weak, but we can support each other in it. And that's what happened in the underground. And that is where the faith is spreading today in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As Ukrainian young people are more and more bombarded by the same influences that are present and prevalent globally. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's take on another question from our studio audience. Everybody pretty well knows you, Noah. Noah, what's your question?
Yes, I can feel the power of your witness as someone who has suffered for Jesus Christ. I can feel that power. one does not always feel that power from our priests, our bishops, and our cardinals. Of course, no one makes the choice to go and suffer like you have suffered. But what could you say to them so they could have the moral authority of a life that has suffered for Jesus Christ?
I've suffered a little bit, but remember, I was born in Syracuse, New York. I lived a soft, middle-class existence. I was never imprisoned. I was never beaten for my faith. I was ridiculed as a teenager.
Yeah.
I felt a vocation in the 70s. That was not a high point for vocations to the priesthood in the United States. But I've had the great grace of recording the testimonies of many living martyrs. As we were beginning the project of the university, we began with an Institute of Church History. And we were fascinated by this history, which could have been lost because the underground hid every trace of its activity. There were no documents, there were no archives. And so what we did is we did a systematic effort over 25 years, and we interviewed over 2,500 people. We transcribed it all. It's 150,000 pages of transcribed life stories.
Yeah, oral history.
Oral history. It's an oral history
down.
project. When the people from the underground saw that we really care about what they lived, they really opened up.
Yeah.
They gave us their arrest warrants. If they had any pictures from Siberia or from, some kind of imprisonment, if there were any pictures at all from the underground, they gave it to us. And we decided actually that this would be the kind of a pillar of our university. The other pillar, this is the Martyrs. The other pillar is the marginalized. I was kind of a disciple from a distance, and then in a friendship with Jean Vanier, the founder of L'Arche.
Yes.
And we decided to build the university on the martyrs and the marginalized. We took into the center of the university, which has high academic ambitions. Right now it has the highest SAT scores of any university in Ukraine. And by far, actually, by 5%. We took those that do not have a high IQ and put them in the center because our friends with special needs have a special gift. In this society where people fear the other because the system kills systematically, so you close yourself off from all kinds of outside dangers by a mask, a facade, a wall. In that system where the relationships are encumbered by that fear, our friends with special needs break the ice.
Yeah.
They don't care if you're rector, bishop, rich or poor. They just want to know, can you love?
Yeah.
And they ask, can you love? That's the most important pedagogical question. So I was influenced by the Martyrs, and in many years of sharing experiences with our handicapped friends, our friends with special gifts, I think I received a lot of graces, and I want to share those with joy and confidence that this is God's church.
Yep.
The gates of hell will not prevail over it.
And, we have forces, as a matter of fact, they just bragged a year or so ago in Iceland that they have nobody in Iceland with Down syndrome because they killed them all. They're bragging. Yeah. And what they miss is that the folks who have these various mental and physical challenges are needed by society because they teach us to be gentle. They evoke that from us, and societies that destroy them become violent and self-destructive in wider ways. Let's take another call if you don't mind. Thomas?
Yes, Father. How are
You calling from Tennessee?
I am, Father.
Well, you are
My
something.
question, go ahead, what did you say?
I said you're something.
Yes, I love your program, and I just love to watch you and your guests. My question is for the Archbishop, and with a follow-up question. Archbishop, why do you think that our young people here in the United States have so recently enthusiastically embraced socialism, given what we've been through in the 20th century? And my follow-up question is, do you think it has anything to do with secular or public education?
I'll start with the quip. I think it was Churchill that said that any young person that wasn't a socialist doesn't have a heart, and any mature person that didn't drop socialism doesn't have a mind.
Yes. Yeah, if you're not a socialist by 20, you have no heart. If you're not a capitalist by 40, you have no brains.
So I think it sounds like a good idea. It sounds like, you know, everybody's going to thrive, and a certain degree of social sharing is, of course, comes out of the gospel. In all our systems, we share.
And family is about share. That's the nature of family.
But socialism, in all of its genesis, has been an ideology or a worldview that is very closely connected with a displacement of the sacred and a displacement of relationship with God.
And of the family. That's also gone.
I know that in the 70s and 80s, industrialists in Italy who were being challenged by their workers who joined the Italian Communist Party would send those workers to visit the Soviet Union. They would pay for these trips so that people could see what it really is like. Between Estonia and Albania, China and Vietnam, there's 2 billion people that have or have had this experience. And yes, there were certain good things that happened, but the cost, the human devastation,
environmental devastation, all this, it was horrendous.
Socialism often proceeds to a radical limitation of freedom. And the radical limitation of our freedom has the quality of negating our dignity. We need to share, but forcing people to share does not create real charity. And it undermines responsibility, it undermines initiative. There was a general maxim in the Soviet Union: initiative is punished. And we see that in the really socialist communist countries, people suffer in a tremendous way.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of young people have bought into the idea that they have to go to college. The expense is enormous today compared to what I paid back when I was an undergrad. I mean, it was $1,200 a year. Now it's $65,000 in a lot of these universities a year. And then the economy had a lot of collapse in the 2008, and they couldn't get jobs, they couldn't pay their loans. And I think somebody help us. That's part of this too. So this is part of the attraction. Let's take another phone call. Jason, where are you calling from?
Yes, Hazleton, Pennsylvania.
Great. And your question?
Yes, I'm from the Most Reverend Archbishop. I'm from Shenandoah, Pennsylvania originally, and the Father Walter Chizik. I was baptized in the same church that he was and
Great
everything.
man.
And I love the Church of the Ukrainian and Byzantine because it grew me fonder to God and it helped me so much. And I love it so much and everything, being a Catholic. And the Ukrainian church is so beautiful on Easter. And what's some words of prayer that you could give to me? And please pray for me, both you, Father and Archbishop.
Absolutely.
Tony's your name, right?
No, Jason.
Jason, this was Jason. Jason, God bless you. I visited Shenandoah this summer. It's the oldest standing Ukrainian Catholic church in the U.S., beautiful granite church. When you think of those poor coal miners who are often exploited, who put penny to penny to build these incredible churches.
Yeah.
The parish is proud. Father Ivanov is the pastor there. He's the dean of our South Anthracite Deanery. It's called Anthracite. We have a North Anthracite and a South Anthracite Deanery. We've got a very interesting church there in Centralia. Maybe you've heard of it. It's a town which had to be evacuated because the coal mines caught fire and they continue to burn.
Yes.
So it's a land where people worked hard, had good family life. Those towns are falling on hard times already for many decades because the coal mines are closed and there isn't much work. But the faith remains, and we're going to do everything to support these parishes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something, you know, how different communities have a variety of, you know, emphases. And that's one of the great things about the church. You know, and I noticed it with some of the Eastern, the Oriental Christians I know from the Middle East. Polish people have wonderful Christmas songs. Our Christmas carols are fantastic. But their Easter and good, especially their Good Friday hymns, are just amazing. Yeah. And the Easter celebration in the Byzantine liturgy is so special.
It is.
It's a powerful, powerful celebration. And to be able to enjoy these nuances, to me, you're like making sure you put all the herbs into your stew so that the flavor is rich.
We literally shout for joy.
Yeah, yeah.
100 times we proclaim, Christ is risen, and the
Right.
people respond, indeed he is risen. And, and we greet each other like that until the Ascension.
Yeah, same in the East, you know, that they greet us with Christ is risen, indeed he is risen.
And that is the joy that we are called to bring to the world.
Yeah, and for a church that has been, had so much death meted out to it, to keep on celebrating the resurrection. This is where the faith is a gift of God's grace. And this is the liveliness. We are not going to do it with any idols or nonsense, playing games, dancing, all this. It's going to be Jesus Christ our Lord. Excellency, it is so wonderful to have you here. I want to tell people that the Ukrainian Catholic Education Foundation, you can find out more about them. It's ucef.org. And if you're interested in finding out about the Ukrainian Catholic Archeparchy of Philadelphia, it's ukrarcheparchy.us, and find out more about it. Excellency, would you give us your blessing, please?
May the Lord bless you.
Yeah.
I should sit.
Yes, sit,
sit, okay. We usually stand.
We have just, we have just a few seconds.
The blessing of the Lord be upon you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Excellency. And thank you. And again, keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill so we can keep bringing programs like this and lift up the faith of all of us. God bless you.